My lesbian daughter is trying to force our whole family to dye our hair for Pride Month, so I gave her a brutal reality check. So my 15-year-old daughter has recently come as out lesbian. She is our only child, and my husband and I were extremely supportive of her. We have since stayed up many nights, doing research on how to better support your child after coming out. But our daughter almost seems to have gotten a whole lot worse attitude-wise. Since coming out, she has made every single conversation she has about gay people, about the discrimination they face, which are real issues and I can't deny that. My main problem is when she tells us to try harder to be allies to her. At first my husband and I tolerated this kind of things from her, but as time went on it has become harder and harder to keep her mouth shut. It doesn't help that if anyone doesn't agree with her on a topic, even if it's anything not at all related to her sexuality, she is quick to call homophobia. My husband and I have become victims of these things a lot, and it hurts a lot when the daughter that you love dearly and truly support claims that you are homophobic and don't love her. It all boiled over yesterday night during dinner. It is Pride Month. And my daughter has dyed her hair in order to support it. Cool, I have nothing against it. I think Pride is a good cause to support, and my husband and I support it myself. We promised my daughter we would attend the parade with her a few weeks ago. Well, last night my daughter started talking about Pride, and how important it was for everyone to do as much as they can in order to show support. She then went on to say that she thinks it's disgusting how a straight person will not openly show support during Pride, and compared it to racism. We got into a conversation about it. And during it our daughter told us she would like us to dye our hair for the month of Pride. She said it can be any color, as long as the color is on the rainbow. I told my daughter that as much as we support her, my husband and I were not going to do that. We told her we don't see how us dyeing our hair was going to do anything really. She blew up, calling us homophobic, saying that we don't support her, saying we're anti-gay and so on. My husband was the one who actually had enough and he yelled stop so loud that even I got scared for a second. Our daughter instantly got quiet but I could see she was still angry. My husband started speaking and told her to check her privilege. She tried asking how she was privileged, and my husband replied. He stated that she is gay, and is fortunate enough to live in a country where the LGBTQ community are not seen as animals. He told her that she gets to prance around calling people names if they disagree with her and call homophobia if she doesn't like something. My husband then pulled something up on his phone. He told my daughter to look. It was a video of gay people in less progressive countries speaking about how they were treated, followed by a video of a gay person being punished. The video was horrible. Once it ended, my husband told her that this was the reality for a lot of gay people in the world, and the fact she screams homophobia at us for not dyeing our hair during Pride Month is incredibly insensitive to gay people everywhere else in the world. He told her that not dyeing our hair isn't homophobia, and if she thinks she is then she has been brainwashed. My daughter left without saying much, and has not spoken a lot to us today either. I know we need to talk to her, but we don't know how.
My wife was in a coma and I read her diary for comfort. I wish I never had. My wife was in a bad accident a few months ago that resulted in her being in an 8-day coma. Obviously when she went into the coma, no one knew at the time how long it was going to last. I was envisioning months, if not years, before she would ever wake up. If she ever did, it truly felt like I'd lost her already. I was destroyed with grief and the weight of all the uncertainty. Every day that passed with no good news further plunged me into despair. We have been married for 10 years. We have traveled the world together. We are truly each other's best friend. I was seriously considering the worst things if they told us she would never wake up. One night, I was in our bedroom and are really going through it. It was probably the 5th or 6th day. I was emotionally and physically exhausted and drained from it all. Another day of no good news. I was laying on her side of the bed because it still smelled like her and it was comforting to me. She used to put on lotion at night before we got into bed, so I opened her nightstand drawer to get the bottle and saw her diary there. I have never gone through her things or her diary before, but that night I just wanted some piece of her. I don't know why I didn't just reread our old texts or something. I wasn't really thinking too logically. It's not an excuse, but it is what it is. I began to read her diary. She didn't write every day, so sometimes entries could be days or months apart. This diary was started about 3 years ago. Very quickly I realized that almost all of the entries were angry ones. Angry about female friends or social media followers. Long paragraphs about how they were homewreckers and ugly/talentless/whatever negative trait. She would become furious if a woman followed me on social media or if we ran into a friend in real life. She wrote pages about these women and how she wanted them to die or have their lives destroyed. She was angry that I, quote, basked in all the attention and didn't remove female followers online. She was angry if a woman followed me and didn't also immediately follow her account because, quote again, we are a package deal, not that they know any decency to respect that. She wrote long rants about how women know the nuances of social media interactions and this somehow proved for certain that they wanted me and were actively trying to disrespect our relationship by only following me and not her. I need to stress that none of the women she was angry about have ever messaged me inappropriately or acted in any way besides a friendly manner towards me. These were high school or hometown friends mostly. A big common element many of them had was knowing or being friends with exes of mine. She raged on about how I should not be allowing them to glimpse into our lives, and she suspected they were reporting back to my exes. To be honest with you, the entries were very unhinged and angry. Then I read some entries about how she had messaged some of them from secret accounts. I am summarizing here, but basically over the course of 12 years she has messaged and harassed several women and subtly accused them of trying to sleep with me or disrespect our relationship. She pretended to be an anonymous person from our hometown and would tell them things like she's heard rumors they're homewreckers and just weird manipulative shit that would result in the person deleting me without ever telling me why. Like years of this. Any new person who added me and not her was immediately a problem, and she made sure they knew it somehow in a way that would never blow back on her but still got them away from me. So much made sense. Friends who had ghosted me over the years, people who blocked me, people who didn't say hi in public anymore. It's not like hundreds of people, but definitely 10 to 15 who I just never understood what happened. I would mention these things to her and she would seem comforting and try to reassure me and then ask innocently if maybe they had a thing for me, always non-threateningly, always saying something like, "Yeah, I've had some guy friends who did that." It turned out they were jealous of our relationship. I had to cut them off. It's just not appropriate to have them around knowing their intentions were not purely platonic. I never suspected anything. I effing accepted everything she told me as plausible and even thought to myself how graceful she was in light of it. I'm not even covering half the stuff in the diary, just blatant manipulations of other people in their lives. People she got fired by digging up dirt on them and sending it to their jobs. There were some normal entries, basically things like trips we took and how much she loves me, absolute night and day. She woke up from the coma days later, but had some mobility issues that are now mostly hammered out. I couldn't do anything. For months I've had to be the supportive loving husband she knew before the accident. I've supported her through her entire recovery. I have had to act like I don't know any of this. All the while living with dread whenever someone adds me, I immediately remove them as a follower. I don't know where to go from here. If I'll ever actually confront her, I would like to think I'd have the stones to do it, but honestly, I doubt it. Thanks for listening. I found my wife's old diary and learned the truth about what she had been hiding for 20 years. There were so many times during all this when I thought that I was overreacting, and it makes me sick to my stomach to realize that I had been completely right. I'm a 50-year-old man and I've been with my wife for almost 20 years now. We are high school sweethearts, and I have never wanted another woman in my life. My wife is stunningly beautiful, and she was an amazing mother to our children. She is incredibly charismatic and lights up any room that she walks into. She's also the type of person who makes friends wherever she goes, and she has aged like fine wine. Even though learning the truth about her has ripped my heart in two, I don't know if I have the courage to leave her after all these years. When we were younger, we both had a strong interest in traveling, so we made it a priority to travel to as many countries as we could afford. We ended up visiting almost 30 countries together and racking up years of wild, unique memories. After we had explored the world together, we decided to settle down and have kids, and ever since then, our life has been pretty quiet, or so I thought. The other day I was rummaging around in the garage looking for an old tool I had misplaced when I accidentally knocked over a random, overstuffed box. When I was putting the box back together, I found a small pink diary with a broken lock on it. All of our children are grown, and our only daughter is turning 20 years old. I thought the diary might have belonged to her when she was a child, so I started reading it with the intention to only read a couple of pages to relive old memories. I know that my choice to read the diary might be a little controversial, but I thought it was from when she was around 8 years old. I just wanted to see if there were any wholesome childhood memories that I had forgotten about. I miss my daughter, and all my grown kids so much these days, and sometimes I feel desperate for any reminders of their childhood since it was such a special time in our family. Well, did I get way more than I bargained for? It only took a couple of pages for me to realize that the diary had in fact belonged to my wife. This is when I probably screwed up. Maybe I should have put the diary away as soon as I realized it was my wife's, but I guess curiosity just got the best of me. I kept reading more and more pages of the diary, and I realized she had been keeping it during the time when we were still traveling the world. Meaning, that my wife was about 23, and I was 24 at the time. I hadn't run into any surprises until she started writing about us arriving in Italy. I thought back to the trip. I remember it being one of our worst from my perspective, because I got food poisoning from a crappy cheap restaurant a couple days in. I ended up being bedridden with nausea for 2 days straight during our vacation, and I was feeling so frustrated that I couldn't go out and explore with my wife. But of course, I didn't want to ruin her vacation as well, and I encouraged her to go out and have a good time without me, just to remember to be safe and keep her phone on her. Based on what she told me, she had met some other tourists and went per hopping with them one of the nights. It sounded like a good time, but I was literally in the middle of throwing up as she was telling me about the night, so I wasn't fully paying attention. I guess I should have, because in the next couple of pages of the diary my wife started going into the details about how she had ended up sleeping with some rich Italian local that they had met at one of the bars. My heart sank as soon as I read the lines, and I started to hope that this was some sort of fictional, creative writing exercise instead of my wife's true life events. She talked about the intimacy in detail, as well as the guilt she felt afterwards. In the diary, she explained that she had decided not to tell me since I was in such a weak state and she didn't want to ruin my vacation any further. To my wife's credit, she goes on for pages and pages about how guilty she felt about her mistake and how much she regretted it. But honestly, the damage had been done for me. And I spent the rest of the day just lying down and staring at the wall, thinking about how I had been lied to for literally 20 years. I knew that my wife and I had to have an uncomfortable conversation. And there was no way I couldn't confront her about all this, but again, she's the woman I love, the mother of my children, and leaving her over. This would be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I just don't know if I have the strength. My dad passed away 6 months ago and I just found his disturbing deathbed confession. I wanted to tell my sister but it would break her heart. So my dad passed away 6 months ago after a long and hard battle with cancer, which he contracted not long after his wife, our mother, passed away. Seeing him after our mother passed away was hard. It was almost like his life lost all meaning. That's what makes this confession all the more shocking and heartbreaking. You see, my father and my mother had this undying love that I feel every person in the world should experience and enjoy, because no matter how old they got, they cuddled, they kissed. They held hands and went on romantic getaways, somehow seeming to never lose that spark for each other. I remember as a kid my father surprising my mother with flowers often, buying her chocolates and little gifts randomly, making her handmade drawings. He literally learned origami so he could make swans for her as they were her favorite animal, and each birthday would give her a swan colored indifferently until he had a color beginning with every letter of her full name. My sister noticed this more. While I thought it was cute that our parents were couple goals, my sister admired it more than anything. She would talk about it so much. Tell her friends how amazing our parents' relationship was and would always say that unless she meets a man who treats her how dad treats mom, she doesn't want it. Our father never yelled, never screamed, was the most calm man in the world. Despite standing at 6 feet 7 inches and weighing close to 250 pounds, he was a gentle giant. The one time I saw him get angry was when as a family when walking down the street, 2 passers-by grabbed my mother's hair and yanked it as a joke. My dad proceeded to beat them to a pulp there and then. I remember that moment so well, it encapsulated everything my dad was. The most tender and loving man, but one who would always defend his wife. So, onto the letter. I was cleaning out my dad's attic recently when I stumbled upon a letter. I opened it as I was curious, and when I read it my world shattered. The gist of the letter read, "Dear whoever finds this. Most likely my son or daughter. I'm sure you miss me and miss your mother, and I missed her dearly too in the dying parts of my life. I wanted to hold her one more time. I'm sure you have had this perception that my wife and I's marriage was filled with never-ending love, and love so true that it could never be disputed. I'm sorry, but that is not the whole truth. You see, when I met my wife, she did not catch my eye in the slightest. But I caught hers. I got to know her over time and we hung out sometimes, and over time I could tell she started to develop feelings for me. And I did too. She went from a woman I never thought I could form love with, to someone that I was interested in. And what sparked that was not her beauty, but that she was by far without a doubt the most kind-hearted and beautiful soul I have ever met in my life. I mean, she did things so beautiful I would tear up on the inside. When I met her first, she was broken and deeply traumatized by her horrible life. Despite this, she was so pure. Such a kind soul. I took to loving her over time. And a large reason of that was because she loved me more than I think anyone ever could. Every time I would see her, she would almost cry of happiness. She told me time and time again that I healed her. Throughout the years, my acts of love to her were never-ending. But none of them were purely out of love for her. About 2 years into our relationship I realized I was never going to love her the way I am capable of loving someone deep down, but the way she showed me love was incomparable to anyone else I have ever experienced. I thought so long and so hard, and my decision was to spend my life with her. Spend my life not loving her the way I know I can deep down, and quite frankly not loving her romantically all that much. To me, she was my best friend who I loved to an extent romantically. But I did not love her as much as she loved me in that sense. And so I stayed. I decided that ultimately, her happiness matters way more to me than my own. So much more, that I was willing to uphold an artificial level of love for my entire life for her sake. She died happy, she lived happy, she was in love every day for her life, and my choice to mask my feelings made that happen. It was the ultimate sacrifice for me. The thing is, when we were old I could not imagine my life without her. She was a part of me. Whether that was romantic love on the same level as hers or not. And when she died I was devastated. I had grown to love this woman so strongly, just not in a totally romantic sense, and I cared for her more than anyone could ever understand. Before you wonder, I did not cheat or ever be disloyal to her. I sacrificed my life to make her happy. Her soul was that beautiful. I truly have no regrets about anything that I did. Making her happy was my life's mission, and I succeeded. I cried a lot after reading that. My whole life was almost a lie. I wanted to be mad at my dad, but I couldn't be. He sacrificed his whole life to raise happy kids and to make a woman happy, but on the other side I'm so annoyed. Why did he have to leave this letter? I feel like I should show my sister that she should know the truth. But her heart will break if I do. I really don't know what to do.